What if one of the most famous pregnancies in the world never happened? Let that settle for a moment. The year was 2018. The cameras were flashing. The tabloids were in a frenzy. The royal family, still reeling from Meghan Markle's whirlwind entry into their centuries-old institution, had just been handed another headline-grabbing shock. The Duchess of Sussex was pregnant. Smiles spread across press rooms. A new royal baby is on the way, read the front pages. Archie Mountbatten-Windsor, heir to modernity, diversity, and controversy, was already being celebrated before he'd even taken his first breath. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But what if he wasn't in Meghan's womb to begin with? What if, behind the elaborate gowns, staged belly cradles, and hand-picked press photos, there was something else strapped under that dress? What if that baby bump wasn't a baby at all? In the last few weeks, conservative commentator and cultural lightning rod Candace Owens has reignited one of the most controversial rumors in modern royal history, that Meghan Markle faked her pregnancy. Not once, not quietly, but publicly, repeatedly, and with palace protection. And now, Owens claims she has the evidence to prove it. She says she has documents. She has recordings. She has eyewitnesses. She even says she has something far more damning. A prop. A silicone prop. A moon bump. And if what she's teasing is true, this isn't just about Meghan. This is about deception on a global scale. Now pause. Ask yourself, how did we get here? How did we go from the image of a glowing duchess waving to fans, hand on belly, to whispers of prosthetics, secret NDAs, and a conspiracy that allegedly reached Buckingham Palace itself? And maybe more unsettlingly, why are so many people only starting to ask these questions now? Because for years, anyone who raised doubts about Meghan's pregnancy was labeled a troll, a racist, a conspiracy theorist, a jealous traditionalist clinging to some outdated royal ideal. Mainstream media outlets refused to report on what internet sleuths across Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube had been compiling for years. Time-stamped footage, contradictory interviews, side-by-side photos of a bump that mysteriously changed size between appearances. It was brushed aside, buried, until now. Because now, the silence is breaking. Candace Owens, loved by many, loathed by more, is daring to say what millions were once too afraid to whisper. That the Duchess of Sussex was never pregnant. That Archie was born, yes, but not by her. And that the world was played. Expertly, systematically, and with the royal family's full awareness. But before we dive into the smoking gun, the airport footage, the birth certificate anomalies, the so-called disappearing baby bump, and the whispered confessions of stylists and palisades, we need to look at one thing: why this story is blowing up now. Because let's be honest, this isn't the first time this rumor has surfaced. It isn't even the second. But something is different this time. Something seismic is shifting. And it's all tied to Meghan's latest moves. Have you noticed? She's everywhere again. After a year of Netflix, Spotify cancellations, and Archewell being quietly restructured, Meghan Markle is back in the spotlight. A new lifestyle brand, a cooking show in development, children's books, rumors of a solo return to Hollywood. She's rebuilding, rebranding, rewriting, and she's anchoring it all on the same central identity that won her hearts during her time as a working royal, a doting mother. A fierce mama bear, a woman who prioritized her kids above all else, even a crown. But what if that image, that very foundation, is based on a carefully constructed lie? Think about it. Is it just a coincidence that Candace Owens dropped her first teaser about the moon bump scandal the same week Meghan began pitching her new maternal-focused show? Is it just random timing that an anonymous ex-palace employee contacted a UK tabloid with the cryptic phrase, "I can no longer live with this secret," days before Meghan's interview with a major US magazine about motherhood? And is it pure coincidence that Owens, who has sparred publicly with Meghan before, claims to have obtained a physical moon bump directly linked to the Duchess? This isn't tabloid speculation anymore. This isn't fuzzy screenshots and sketchy YouTube theories. This is turning into a digital war, a credibility crisis, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of Meghan's unraveling. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To understand the scope of this story, the true scale of it, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to the day when everything looked perfect. October 15, 2018. Kensington Palace issued a statement. Their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are very pleased to announce that the Duchess of Sussex is expecting a baby in the spring of 2019. The photos that accompanied the announcement: Meghan and Harry arriving in Australia, smiling, glowing. Meghan wearing a white dress with a barely there bump. Headlines across the world exploded with joy. Morning shows gushed. Royal watchers cried. But beneath the surface, a few keen eyes noticed something odd. That bump. It didn't exist the day before. Literally. Meghan was seen boarding the plane from Heathrow to Sydney with a flat stomach. No arch in her back. No sign of maternity wear. And then, snap. The next morning, she steps out in Sydney, hands placed protectively over a suddenly curved belly. Curious, isn't it? Some brushed it off. Travel bloating, perhaps. Maybe the pregnancy was just newly visible. But then came the photos from just 2 days later, belly even bigger. Then smaller again in Fiji. Then huge again in Tonga. All within the same week. It wasn't just inconsistent. It was erratic, unnatural. And the bump, it moved. And not in a way that suggested kicking. In one clip that has now resurfaced thanks to Owens' campaign, Meghan is seen bending down to pet a child. As she squats, the bump folds. Yes, folds. As if it were collapsing in on itself. For a split second, it looks like it's slipping. The camera cuts. The video was quickly buried by major outlets. But on Twitter? It lives on. Millions of views. Millions of questions. And not a single answer from the Sussexes. Was that just a wardrobe malfunction? Or was something far more artificial at play? Here's the twist. When these questions were raised at the time, the palace refused to engage. Unfounded gossip, one insider said. Deliberate targeting, said another. But not once did they directly deny the use of a prosthetic. And therein lies the problem. Because silence, when paired with visual contradictions, breeds curiosity. It breeds speculation. And now, with Candace Owens pouring gasoline on an already simmering fire, that speculation has exploded. She's not just claiming Meghan wore a moon bump. She's saying she can prove it. She's hinting at footage, paper trails, whistleblowers, even financial records. And she's doing it with a purpose, to demand accountability, not just from Meghan, but from the entire system that protected her. Now ask yourself, if Meghan Markle did, in fact, fake a pregnancy, why? What did she stand to gain? Sympathy? Public support? A protected legacy? And more disturbingly, who else would have had to be involved to make it possible? Her staff? Her doctors? Her mother? Even Prince Harry? This is no longer just about a bump. This is about power, perception, and the construction of a royal myth that may now be falling apart. But before we answer the biggest question of all, was Meghan Markle ever actually pregnant? We need to look at what Candace Owens claims is the most undeniable piece of evidence in her possession. A suitcase, a photograph, and the moment Meghan's own disguise may have betrayed her. Because in just a few frames of leaked airport security footage, Owens says the illusion cracked wide open. And what happens next will chill you to the core. So what had happened in those mysterious airport frames? According to Owens, the now-buried footage, captured discreetly by a Heathrow security officer who was later let go, revealed a glimpse of something most of us would have dismissed as unimportant. A normal security scan, a simple bag inspection, a flash of something strange and squishy inside Meghan's designer carry-on. But to trained eyes, it looked eerily familiar. A mass, shaped like a curved shell, dense silicone, industrial-level detail. Owens said her team froze the footage, zoomed, clarified, enhanced. And then it hit her. It was a moon bump, the same type used in movies, in TV shows, in undercover reality productions where an actress needs to appear pregnant for dramatic effect. Medical grade, adjustable, high elasticity. But how did we get to this moment? How did we get to the day when the world gasped and the belly folded? Let's rewind the tape. It was January 2019. Meghan was nearing her supposed third trimester. The Duchess was still being paraded at events across the UK and beyond, glowing, radiant, and seemingly overjoyed about her royal baby on the way. The palace PR machine was running at full steam. But then came the moment. The clip that's been picked apart by analysts, conspiracy theorists, and now, Owens' investigative team. At a charity engagement in London, Meghan stepped out in a tight-fitted navy dress with her signature coat draped over her shoulders. She smiled, waved, bent down to greet a child. And that's when it happened. The bump folded. No, not kicked. Not jiggled. It folded. Like fabric. Like foam. Like something strapped under a dress that wasn't supposed to move that way. The child's face looked confused. The surrounding press clicked furiously. One flashbulb hit just right, capturing the moment in a still image that soon went viral. For a heartbeat, you could see Meghan's hand fly toward her stomach. Too late. The moment passed. She stood upright again, and the belly seemed to expand once more. Perfectly rounded. Perfectly placed. But that image? That single frozen frame of a collapsing bump? It shattered something. A woman in the crowd later told a local reporter, "I thought I was seeing things. I looked at my husband like, did her belly just bend in half?" He just shrugged. That's when Reddit lit up. Users began compiling side-by-side photos of Meghan's bump from various engagements. The size shifted dramatically, sometimes even on the same day. In one photo, she appeared 8 months pregnant. In another, just days later, she looked barely showing. And then came the body language experts. One viral video pointed out how Meghan constantly touched her belly, not unusual for expectant mothers, but oddly strategic in her case. Always one hand above, one below, almost as if holding something in place, almost as if guarding it from slipping. But here's where it gets stranger. In some videos, the bump wobbles. Literally sways, like it's suspended or strapped on. Not like a baby shifting inside a womb, but like a prop adjusting against movement. And still, the mainstream media said nothing. Nothing. Why? Was it because they feared being labeled sexist or racist? Was it because the Sussex PR team had a stranglehold on their public image? Or was it because, deep down, everyone wanted to believe the fairy tale? But not everyone was fooled. An anonymous source from within one of the royal press pools told Owens that multiple photographers had captured similar oddities. Frames where Meghan's belly looked oddly detached from her actual body line, or shifted unnaturally when she walked. But here's the kicker. Those frames were allegedly scrubbed from the official distribution servers within hours. Why? Who ordered it? What were they afraid the public might see? And it wasn't just that one event. It kept happening. The yoga studio outing where her bump appeared lower than it had days before. The theater engagement where she awkwardly fumbled with her coat, briefly revealing a flash of fabric beneath her dress that didn't match the garment she was wearing. Was it a support harness? And then came the chair incident. If you've never seen it, prepare yourself. At another royal visit, this time a women's empowerment panel, Meghan sits down abruptly. And the bump, visible through her dress, jerks upward, like it detached momentarily before settling back into place. One audience member posted to Instagram that night. She sat down too fast. You could see something shift. It was weird. The post was deleted 2 hours later. Too late. Screenshots exist. And Owens' team has them. Now, let's stop here and ask a direct question. How many times does a belly have to act strange before it stops being chalked up to pregnancy quirks and starts looking like manipulation? Let's be clear, women carry differently. Every pregnancy is unique. Some show early, some don't. Some carry high, some low. But what we're talking about here isn't just variation. We're talking defiance of physics. We're talking wardrobe malfunctions revealing plastic seams. We're talking a belly that folds like a camping chair. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to raise an eyebrow. You just have to be awake. And Owens? She's wide awake now. According to her, the collapse clip was what first tipped off a source close to a high-end fashion designer who had allegedly consulted for Meghan in 2018. The designer, who remains unnamed for legal reasons, had previously worked in TV and was known for creating realistic costume prosthetics. When asked why a royal would ever need such a thing, the source replied. She said it was for a private project, some documentary or something. We were told not to ask questions. But the specs? They were pregnancy-specific. Owens says the measurements given to the designer matched Meghan's exact frame. The invoice was paid through a Delaware-based shell company. Sound familiar? That shell company appears multiple times in later allegations, including surrogate compensation payments and NDAs. But more on that later. Let's stay on the day of the collapse. After the viral moment began circulating, Meghan's team went into overdrive. The original YouTube upload of the charity event? Copyright struck within hours. Clips of the moment were flagged across Twitter. Even Instagram pages posting stills reported getting warnings. Why? If it was just a glitch, just bad lighting, or a weird camera angle, why work so hard to erase it? Unless it wasn't a glitch. Unless they were hiding something. And Owens is convinced they were. Her video, The Belly That Folded, racked up over 7 million views within 72 hours. She breaks down the moment in slow motion, pointing out fabric creases, awkward hand movements, and the unmistakable sag that happens when Meghan rises. It's not just the movement, Owens says in the clip, voice deadly calm. It's the panic in her face, the stiffness in her upper body, the way her hands clutched the bump a second too late, as if realizing the prop had slipped. Now here's the most damning part. Multiple maternity experts have come forward anonymously, stating that the kind of movement seen in the footage is inconsistent with a real third trimester pregnancy. One said, that bump behaves like it's attached with Velcro. Another added, there's no abdominal tension. None. A woman that late in pregnancy doesn't sit or stand that way without adjusting for the baby. So what does all this mean? Are we saying Meghan never gave birth? Not yet. Not officially. We're building the case, piece by piece. But the day that bump collapsed, that was the moment the illusion cracked. That was the day millions of people saw the royal fairy tale for what it might truly be, a scripted performance. A role played with wardrobe changes, perfect lighting, and possibly a rubber belly. And the silence from the palace? Deafening. They knew the footage existed. They knew it was circulating. They knew the questions were multiplying. But no statement came. Not even a vague denial. Instead, Meghan appeared in public less frequently. When she did, coats grew longer. Fabrics became looser. Poses more controlled. And yet, the bump kept changing. Larger in the morning. Smaller by night. Visible in one outfit. Practically gone in another. What are we to make of that? What would you think if a public figure's pregnancy seemed to fluctuate by the hour? Would you believe your own eyes? Or wait to be told what to believe? Because that's what this entire saga is about, belief. Do you trust the image? Do you trust the brand? Do you trust the woman in front of the camera? Or do you trust the cracks? Because the cracks are there. And in Chapter 2, we'll meet someone who saw them up close. She measured Meghan's frame. She adjusted the fabric. She ironed the seams. And one day, she got too close. A royal seamstress, who now claims she was forced into silence. But before she left, she touched something beneath the dress. And it wasn't a baby. Have you ever brushed your fingers across something and instantly felt wrong? That gut-deep jolt of unease when you know what you're touching shouldn't be there. When your instincts scream louder than logic. That's the exact moment a seamstress, known only as Marlene in court-protected documents, realized she was involved in something far beyond couture. And it all started with a hemline. Before the world questioned the size of Meghan Markle's baby bump. Before footage went viral and Candace Owens dropped bombshell after bombshell. Marlene was just a mid-tier staffer in the royal wardrobe division. Not a designer. Not a stylist. Not a headline. Just a woman with decades of fabric in her fingers and secrets stitched into silence. But the day she ran her hand across Meghan's dress, feeling not flesh, not cloth, but something molded, squishy, unnatural, she knew something wasn't right. She wasn't supposed to speak. But now she has. And what she told Candace Owens might just turn everything upside down. Let's rewind. It was December 2018, a little more than halfway through Meghan's supposed pregnancy. The Duchess had requested a custom-fitted evening gown for a diplomatic reception. Meghan, ever the fashion-forward royal, had rejected the palace's formal wardrobe department and instead insisted on using outside stylists, Hollywood contacts, Los Angeles designers flown in for fittings. But due to last-minute changes, a royal seamstress had to be called in. Someone discreet, trusted, experienced. Enter Marlene. According to Owens, Marlene had served under both Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth. She wasn't a name the public knew, but within palace walls, she was respected, revered. She had never broken protocol, never spoken to the press, never overstepped. Until Meghan. In Candace's Tell-All podcast interview, Marlene described her first encounter with Meghan as guarded. Not cold exactly, but distant, and strangely rehearsed. She wouldn't make full eye contact, Marlene says. She'd smile, but only when someone was watching. And she kept adjusting her coat. Constantly. Then came the dress. A sleek, silk-based number with a high empire waist. Flattering. Designed to drape smoothly over Meghan's growing bump. But it didn't. It clung. It bunched. It draped wrong. Marlene, trained to spot imperfections in a blink, noticed immediately that something wasn't moving naturally beneath the fabric. The bump didn't shift with Meghan's posture. It didn't flatten or sway like it would on a real body. It sat there, static, artificial, almost too perfect. So she reached out. Just a simple professional touch. A seam adjuster's instinct. She flattened the dress along Meghan's stomach with her palm. And froze. It gave, she told Owens. Like rubber. Like memory foam. Not muscle. Not skin. Not bone. I felt edges. Edges. Think about that. Not a curve. Not a belly button. Edges. As if she'd just laid her hand on a prosthetic. In that instant, Meghan flinched. Pulled away. Please don't adjust there, she said. It's sensitive. Sensitive? To a seamstress adjusting fabric? It didn't make sense. But Marlene didn't ask. She wasn't allowed to ask. Royals had boundaries. And Meghan, more than any royal Marlene had ever worked with, enforced them like prison walls. The fitting ended quickly. Meghan stepped behind a screen. An assistant, unknown to Marlene, whisked the gown away. Marlene never saw it again. But the memory lingered. It was wrong, she said quietly. I couldn't sleep that night. I've tailored thousands of garments over decades. I've dressed pregnant women. I know what that feels like. What it should move like. This wasn't that. 2 weeks later, she was reassigned. No explanation. No warning. Just a quiet note from senior staff. Her services would not be needed for Sussex engagements moving forward. But here's where things spiral. 3 months later, Marlene received a letter. Not from the palace. From a legal firm. A non-disclosure reminder. She hadn't spoken. Hadn't broken silence. But someone, somewhere, was nervous. Nervous enough to make sure a loyal seamstress kept her mouth shut. For years, she did. Until now. Why speak up? Owens asked her. Why now? Marlene hesitated. Then said the 6 words that chilled listeners around the world. Because I held the lie in my hands. Now, let's ask the obvious question. Is one seamstress enough to accuse a royal of faking a pregnancy? Of course not. But she isn't alone. Not anymore. Marlene's testimony sparked a chain reaction. Owens has since received 4 separate accounts. One from a hairstylist, one from a makeup artist, one from a wardrobe courier, and one from a limousine driver, all anonymous. All citing fear of retaliation, but all telling eerily similar stories. Strange behavior, secretive assistance, odd instructions about no touching below the waist, and, in 2 cases, payments. Unusual payments. Owens claims her legal team traced hush money, marked as consultation compensation, back to a Delaware LLC registered under an Archwell-affiliated umbrella. The same LLC that paid for a Hollywood prosthetics order in late 2018. Are you seeing the pattern? Because it gets deeper. One of the stylists, whose voice was disguised during Owens' broadcast, said something that snapped the internet to attention. I was told to steam the dress, not fit it, she said, because it was already pre-shaped. And when I asked what that meant, they said, it's molded. You'll see. Pre-shaped. Molded. That doesn't describe a woman's body. That describes a product. Let's zoom out again. Marlene's account. The mounting stories. The legal pressure. The stylists paid to stay quiet. It begs the question, what was the palace doing during all this? Were they blind? Were they fooled? Or were they complicit? Candace Owens doesn't mince words. The moment Meghan made that pregnancy public, the royal family became co-authors of the narrative. They had a responsibility to vet the story, to protect the integrity of the institution. But instead, they circled the wagons. They let the fairy tale grow. Because it suited them. She might be right. Or she might be poking the bear. Because while Marlene has finally spoken, and others are beginning to whisper, the core evidence is still under wraps. But not for long. Owens says she's preparing a full release, an expose that will include all sworn testimony, all NDAs, all receipts, including a document Marlene slipped into her bag the day she was reassigned. It's a tailoring sheet, standard issue, nothing classified, but it lists Meghan's measurements during her supposed 3rd trimester. And there's one problem. They're identical to her pre-pregnancy dimensions. Waistline, bust, hip, identical. Is it possible for a woman to carry a baby and gain 0 inches on her waist? Unlikely. Is it possible that a woman in her 3rd trimester would have a belly too flat to require seam expansion? Not unless she was hiding something or wearing something. Now let's bring it home. Marlene didn't leak the measurements to smear anyone. She didn't break her silence for fame. She did it, she says, because she saw the lie every time Meghan walked into a room. Not in her face, not in her smile, but in the fabric, in the way it bunched, in the way it resisted natural flow, in the way it mimicked reality but wasn't real. And that, dear viewers, is how this chapter ends. With a seamstress, a folded gown, and a growing suspicion that Meghan Markle didn't just play a role. She wore it, literally. But if that's true, then who dressed her? Who funded the prop? Who transported it across countries? And more terrifyingly, who made sure it disappeared before Archie was born? Because in the next phase, we go down under, to a royal tour where Meghan's bump changed size by the hour, and where a photographer captured something the palace tried desperately to erase. What kind of pregnancy grows overnight? Seriously, ask yourself. Have you ever seen a baby bump inflate like a balloon one morning, then deflate like a souffle the next evening? Well, that's exactly what people started noticing when Meghan Markle landed in Australia. The year was 2018. October. Springtime down under. And what began as a royal tour quickly morphed into a global stage for what Candace Owens now calls the most elaborate visual manipulation in royal history. Because the bump? It didn't grow gradually. It expanded, then shrunk, then swung side to side as she walked, like it was filled with air, or worse, attached with Velcro. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start on day 1. October 15th, 2018. Kensington Palace announces that Meghan and Harry are expecting. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are very pleased to announce that the Duchess of Sussex is expecting a baby in the spring of 2019. The press eats it up. Social media explodes. Oprah calls it the perfect news at the perfect time. But just hours later, something bizarre happens. As Meghan steps off the plane in Sydney, the world sees the bump. And it's there. Prominent. Round. Pronounced. A pregnancy in full bloom. Except for one tiny detail. She boarded the plane 24 hours earlier at Heathrow Airport with a completely flat stomach. No sign of a bump. Not even a bulge. Photos from Heathrow? They still exist. One shows her carrying a laptop case, shoulders back, abdomen taut. Another captures her waving to press, mid-torso perfectly flat beneath her coat. And then, boom. By the time she's waving to crowds in Sydney, it's like she's 6 months along. Some claimed it was clever wardrobe design. Others suggested travel swelling. But if you've ever flown 10,000 miles in 3rd trimester pregnancy, you know, nothing about international air travel makes a bump appear overnight. That's not how biology works. But it is how props work. Let's break down the tour. Day 1. The bump is high, perfectly round, stretched tight under a white sheath dress. Meghan holds her hands over it constantly, beaming for cameras. Day 2. At the beach, the bump appears smaller, looser, hanging slightly lower. Day 3. In Melbourne, the dress clings in odd ways. From one angle, she looks barely pregnant. From another, suddenly heavily pregnant again. Day 4. In a fitted navy dress, the belly shifts awkwardly as she steps into a car. Viewers online note what appears to be a strap outline running across her lower back under the dress. Now here's where it gets disturbing. A photographer, embedded with the royal press pool for the tour, allegedly captured multiple photos of Meghan from backstage angles, walking behind curtains, adjusting her dress, being fitted by aides mid-event. And in one photo, Owens claims you can see the bump in her assistant's hands. Yes, not on Meghan, but in the hands of an aide, being carried. For a second, maybe 2. Owens described the image in a members-only episode of her show. You can see the shape. It's semi-folded. Looks like silicone. The assistant's holding it in a cloth bag, probably to conceal it. But you can see enough to recognize it. And right behind her, Meghan, in a robe, waiting. That image has never been released, but rumors of it have circulated for years. Some say it was bought up by a UK tabloid and buried. Others claim the palace threatened legal action against the photographer, who, not long after, left journalism altogether. What happened on that tour? Why was the bump acting like a separate entity? Why did its size fluctuate daily? And more unsettling, why did Meghan switch outfits so frequently, sometimes 4 to 5 times in a single day? Royal tours usually feature multiple engagements. Wardrobe changes are normal. But Meghan's outfit changes were peculiar, not just for style, but for silhouette. Every new outfit brought a new shape. One journalist noted, it was like playing Guess the Trimester. One moment she looked 3 months along, then 5, then back to barely showing, then a sudden ballooned silhouette that suggested late 3rd trimester. Let's talk to physics for a moment. Human pregnancies don't do this. Not in a span of hours. Not without serious medical risk. Which begs the question, was she switching moon bumps? Different prosthetics for different angles? Different stages? Candace Owens says yes. She even claims to have a source who worked in Meghan's Sydney hotel suite. Someone who allegedly saw multiple bump molds lined up on a vanity next to makeup and hair products. They were shaped like half footballs, the source said. Some were soft, some firmer. I didn't understand what they were until later. I thought they were props for a photo shoot. One was wrapped in tissue. Another had visible clasps. A third had the initials MM etched in the back. Still not convinced. Let's dive deeper. During the same tour, Meghan attended an event at the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. She was supposed to deliver a short speech. The media was prepped. Students were lined up. Photographers in place. But suddenly, without warning, Meghan cancels her appearance. Palace aides cite security concerns. But insiders told a different story. One local journalist overheard a royal aide saying, "There's a wardrobe malfunction." Another said Meghan refused to come out of the dressing room. An Australian reporter who asked too many questions about the bump was quietly removed from the press pool for the rest of the tour. Coincidence? Or control? Owens points to this event as the breaking point. When Meghan allegedly began demanding tighter restrictions on photography angles, tighter security perimeters, and banned any backstage footage from being captured. But the damage was done. People had seen enough. Online forums exploded. Reddit threads like r/Sussex Truth compiled over 300 side-by-side comparisons of Meghan's bump during the tour. Her bump at 8 a.m. Her bump at noon. Her bump at 4 p.m. All different. Some photos showed clear inconsistencies in size. Others revealed unusual lines beneath the fabric, creases and seams that didn't align with the garment. And then came the sway. In a viral clip taken during a walkabout in Rotorua, New Zealand, Meghan's bump appears to move side to side as she walks, separately from her body. Watch it. It's still out there. One user slowed the footage to 0.25x speed. You can see it. A small lag in momentum, as if the bump wasn't attached to her torso, but swinging from a support strap. Now, let's add the final nail in this chapter's coffin. At one point, Meghan hugs a woman during a meet and greet. The woman, clearly surprised, whispers something into Meghan's ear. Meghan's smile stiffens. She steps back. Moments later, a royal aide is seen pulling the woman aside. What did she say? No one knows. But a lip reader claims it was this. It's not real, is it? Let that sink in. A stranger, face to face with the Duchess. Daring to whisper the question millions were too afraid to ask. And Meghan's reaction? Stiff. Cold. Withdrawn. No laughter. No correction. No denial. Just silence. And that silence echoes across the rest of the tour. After returning from Australia, Meghan's bump size remained inconsistent. She stopped doing unfiltered public appearances. And when she did step out, the coats got longer, the fabrics thicker, the shapes more ambiguous. Because maybe the performance had gone on too long. Maybe the illusion was cracking. But if you think that's where the story ends, you're wrong. Because as Meghan's bump got stranger, so did the details around Archie's birth. Conflicting reports, confused timelines, a hospital that wouldn't confirm her admission, and a nurse who says Meghan never gave birth there. We'll get to that. But next, we need to examine the most peculiar pattern in this entire scandal. The clothes. Specifically, the clothes Meghan stopped wearing. Because in the next phase, we'll uncover why Meghan's maternity wardrobe may be the final thread that unravels the entire lie. And why, according to one whistleblower, every outfit had a second version. What kind of pregnant woman has a maternity wardrobe that vanishes? No hand-me-downs, no archived pieces, no charity auctions, No baby bump dresses ever seen again. Ever wonder why? Meghan Markle, global fashion icon, cover girl, and self-styled humanitarian, wore dozens of high-end maternity outfits throughout her pregnancy in 2018 and early 2019. Custom Dior, Givenchy, Carolina Herrera, Burberry. Silk gowns, casual coats, layered pieces worth tens of thousands of dollars. And then, gone. Not a single one of those outfits has ever resurfaced. Not in donation campaigns. Not in exhibitions. Not even on display in royal fashion retrospectives, where Diana's and Kate's maternity gowns were famously preserved. Now ask yourself, why? What happened to those garments? And what secrets were sewn into their seams? Candace Owens believes she knows the answer. And it's darker than we ever imagined. Because according to an insider from Meghan's inner styling circle, an individual whose identity Owens is legally shielding, every maternity outfit Meghan wore had a second version, an almost identical twin garment, designed and tailored not for a human body, but for a body wearing a silicone prosthetic. Yes, you heard that correctly. Two versions of every dress. One for the public, one for the bump. But why? Let's start with what we know. Meghan's maternity fashion was unusually curated, even by royal standards. Unlike Kate Middleton, who often rewore pieces and supported British high street brands, Meghan's wardrobe was dominated by ultra-luxury, Hollywood-style ensembles. Some outfits were worn for less than an hour, others only for photographs, and none have been seen since. Compare this to Kate, whose maternity pieces have been donated to charity, included in royal exhibitions, or even loaned to museums. Diana's maternity gowns are considered iconic. There's an entire collection of them preserved by the Royal Collection Trust. But Meghan? Radio silence. No donation records. No press about her historic fashion choices. No confirmed museum loans. Not even private resales. Owens calls it the Great Erasure. And it makes sense. Because if the clothes were tailored to fit a fake pregnancy belly, if the seams were stretched, distorted, reinforced to conceal the outlines of a silicone moon bump, then those garments couldn't just be passed on. They had to be destroyed, because they were evidence. Evidence of a costume. And Meghan? She knew the power of clothing. From the moment she married into the royal family, her wardrobe became her message. From neutral-tone dresses meant to blend in with the Queen, to bold colors meant to stand out on global tours, she understood the visual language of royalty. But during her pregnancy, her choices became theatrical, overstated, almost deliberately performative. Candace Owens points to one outfit in particular, the cream-colored Calvin Klein dress Meghan wore in February 2019 for a museum gala in London. The dress clung tightly to her belly, showing a bump that looked significantly larger than it had just days before during a visit to a local school. That same night, Meghan moved awkwardly in video footage, her bump visibly shifting under the dress. But the real twist? A few months later, Calvin Klein confirmed in an interview that they had no record of supplying Meghan with a maternity gown for that event. It was a custom commission, allegedly arranged through a third-party stylist, not directly through the fashion house. When asked for a quote, their spokesperson declined to comment. Owens says this is part of a broader pattern. Clothes appearing from unknown sources, disappearing without a trace, never validated by the designers themselves. Because if you create an outfit designed to hide a lie, you can't let it live too long. You can't risk it being inspected, altered, or worse, worn by someone else. It's fashion disposal as damage control. Let's take another example. The green Erdem coat Meghan wore during her visit to Canada House in London. It was photographed extensively. The bump appeared unusually stiff. Photos showed an odd gap between her belly and upper chest, like something was pushing the fabric out from inside. That coat, never seen again. Not in Meghan's post-royal life. Not in charity archives. Not in fashion recaps. Nothing. Owens says an anonymous fashion courier, hired to transport Meghan's garments between venues, claimed he once delivered a duplicate version of a dress to a private hotel suite. When asked why, the assistant reportedly said, "One is for movement. The other is for visuals." What does that mean? One dress for walking. One dress for photographs. Why would a pregnant woman need two versions of the same outfit? Unless the second one was designed for a body wearing a fake bump. This same courier claimed the garments were later picked up and disposed of by a private security firm. Normally, royal clothing is handled by archivists, laundered professionally, or stored in palace vaults. But Meghan's? Gone. Erased. Like they were never worn. There's another layer here, and it's chilling. Meghan's wardrobe changes often happened off camera. Scheduled events would begin. Meghan would appear in one outfit, disappear briefly between engagements, and return in a different one, sometimes subtly altered, sometimes completely swapped. And each time, the bump changed with it. Some days, she looked 7 months along. Some days 4. Sometimes the bump sat high, sometimes low, sometimes flat under silk, other times bulging under cotton. Owens compiled a chart. Yes, an actual timeline. Tracking bump size versus outfit choice across 19 separate public appearances. The results? No biological consistency. A real pregnancy grows predictably. Meghan's bump didn't. It conformed to the clothes, not the other way around. And when the clothes were no longer needed, they were discarded. Even Meghan's accessories tell a strange story. Take the belts. Pregnant women rarely wear high-waisted belts after the second trimester. Too uncomfortable. Too risky. But Meghan often wore belts directly over her bump. Fashion statement? Or were they hiding seams? Owens believes many of these belts were more functional than fashionable, used to anchor the bump, to hold it in place, to disguise edges. She claims one designer confirmed this. The belt was the structure. It's what made the silhouette look natural on camera. Think about that. The belt made it look natural. Not the body, not the pregnancy. The belt, the prop, the performance. And still, no one questioned it. Because who questions a mother-to-be? Who interrogates a pregnant woman? We're taught to protect, to defend. And Meghan knew that. She weaponized it. She turned fashion into armor, into camouflage. But no costume can be worn forever. Eventually, it has to come off. And when it does, someone has to make it disappear. Owens says Meghan's team was obsessive about post-event cleanup. Garments were picked up quickly. Press never got access to wardrobes. Stylists were rotated frequently, rarely working more than a few events in a row. One insider said, they didn't want anyone getting too familiar with the fabrics. Because familiarity breeds questions. Questions like, why is this dress stitched over a silicone mold? Why does this coat have reinforced panels at the stomach? Why are we tailoring to a shape instead of a person? Now here's the wildest part. Owens believes at least 3 of Meghan's most controversial maternity outfits were never actually worn at all, but digitally imposed after the fact using photo manipulation. One specific photo, of Meghan walking alongside Harry in a blue gown, is currently under forensic review. Owens claims anomalies in lighting, shadow alignment, and fabric movement suggest the image was altered. If proven true, it would be unprecedented. A royal appearance faked in post-production to sell a narrative. To maintain an illusion. A fashion-based lie. But even without the digital angle, the physical evidence speaks volumes. The clothes are gone. The outfits are missing. The accessories vanished. And all that's left are photographs. Photographs that now look less like royal history and more like a movie set. But if Meghan's pregnancy wardrobe was a costume, if it was all a disguise, then what does that say about the baby? Because behind the silks and shadows lies a bigger question. One that we explore in Chapter 5. A question written in the pages of a yoga teacher's diary. A diary that recorded Meghan's private prenatal sessions. A diary that says the words, no movement, no heartbeat, no baby, no movement, no heartbeat, no baby. 7 words, scribbled in a private yoga teacher's journal. A line that, if true, could obliterate the entire mythology surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancy. Because what does it mean when a woman claiming to be 6 months pregnant shows no signs of life in her womb? Not once, not ever, over the course of multiple sessions. That's the question Candace Owens is asking. Because, according to her, that diary exists. And its contents are damning. Let's rewind. During her pregnancy, Meghan often touted the benefits of yoga. It wasn't just a passing trend. She spoke about it in interviews, posted about it, referenced it during events. It was, she said, a vital part of my prenatal wellness. Naturally, the media latched on. Yoga was part of the Markle brand. Holistic, mindful, motherly. And yet, she rarely, if ever, practiced yoga publicly during that time. No images, No paparazzi sightings leaving prenatal yoga studios. No wellness retreats. No workout videos. Nothing. Odd, right? Not for a private citizen, but for a royal, shaping a global motherhood narrative? Unusual. That's where the diary comes in. Candace Owens claims she was contacted in early 2025 by a former prenatal yoga instructor from Los Angeles, someone who allegedly gave Meghan Markle in-home sessions for nearly 3 months during the second trimester. The instructor, now retired, had kept meticulous notes, not for gossip, not for headlines, but for professional records. And those records, according to Owens, paint a terrifyingly quiet picture. No fetal movement, no weight fluctuation, no physiological changes consistent with second trimester pregnancy. Instead, stillness, silence, and a growing sense of unease. Let's be clear, prenatal yoga instructors aren't doctors, but they're trained to spot the signs of a progressing pregnancy, especially during intimate one-on-one sessions. They observe posture, breathing, flexibility, fatigue, even emotional shifts. And Meghan showed none of them. The instructor's journal, which Owens says was authenticated by handwriting analysts, includes entries like, client reports fatigue but demonstrates high energy during flow. No visible bump during reclined twist pose. No fetal movement felt during hand-on belly guidance. Client giggled and said he's shy today, but the pattern continued. Week after week. Still no signs of kicking. No belly growth. No swelling. The instructor allegedly confided in a colleague, saying, "It's like teaching yoga to a woman playing pregnant. Like she's acting. It's not normal." Owens breaks it down further. During the second trimester, especially around weeks 20 to 24, most expectant mothers begin to feel distinct fetal movement. Not just butterflies or flutters, but kicks, rolls, pushes, especially during stretches, deep breathing, and stillness. Exactly the conditions yoga provides. But according to the diary, nothing. No movement. Not even once. Let that sink in. 3 months. Multiple sessions per week. Zero baby activity. Even more bizarre? Meghan allegedly refused to allow hands-on adjustments near her belly. A standard practice in prenatal yoga, especially during hip-opening poses and side stretches. She'd flinch, step back, say, "That's not necessary today." Or worse, allegedly quip, "You don't want to disturb the little prince." Sounds cute, right? Until you realize it was a deflection, because there was nothing to disturb. One day, the instructor noted something particularly unsettling. A moment that, years later, still gives her chills. They were practicing balasana, child's pose. A resting posture. Knees apart, belly against the mat, forehead down. It's a pose designed to cradle the womb, to center breath into the belly, to connect with the baby. But when Meghan took the pose, her belly didn't press into the mat. It didn't flatten or stretch. Instead, it folded. The instructor wrote, "Saw a crease across abdomen, almost like fabric folding in half." She asked Meghan gently if she was comfortable. Meghan allegedly smiled, adjusted her shirt, and replied, "This dress is just tight. That's all." But the instructor knew it wasn't the dress. It was what was under it. Or rather, what wasn't. After that session, Meghan canceled all future appointments. No explanation. Just a text from an assistant. "Thank you for your service. The Duchess will no longer require yoga instruction." End of story? Not quite. Because what happened next raises even more questions. According to Owens, the yoga instructor received a cease and desist letter 3 months later. Why? She hadn't spoken to press, hadn't leaked anything, hadn't violated any agreements. But the letter was clear. Any disclosure of private information pertaining to the wellness and physical condition of the Duchess of Sussex will be considered a breach of confidentiality and subject to legal action. Sound familiar? It's the same type of letter Owens claims was sent to the seamstress, to the stylist, to the hotel employee, a pattern of silencing, of intimidation, of burying anyone who got too close. But the diary? It remained, handwritten, dated, untouched, until Candace got hold of it. Now you might be wondering, couldn't this just be a misunderstanding? Maybe the instructor misread the signs. Maybe Meghan carried differently. Maybe she had an anterior placenta, which can muffle kicks. Fair. But even with an anterior placenta, some movement is always felt, especially over 3 months of physical contact and meditation. And yet nothing? No kicks. No heartbeat, which some instructors can hear through specialized sound bowls or meditation tones. No bump growth. Just a flat belly in stretchy clothes and nervous deflection. But here's where it gets even more suspicious. During this exact same time period, according to Owens' timeline, Meghan appeared at several public events with dramatically visible bump sizes. Photos show her in tight dresses, posing, cradling. But those appearances? All staged, controlled, distant, never raw, never candid. No walk-in talks, no spontaneous outings, only highly curated photo ops. So we have a woman who, privately, shows no pregnancy signs, and, publicly, fluctuates between appearing 3 and 7 months pregnant, sometimes in the span of days. That's not a pregnancy. That's a production. And the yoga teacher knew it. Owens says the instructor's final diary entry about Meghan was only 5 words long. Something is deeply, deeply wrong. So what now? Should the world believe one yoga teacher? One diary? One story? Maybe not. But when stacked next to the seamstress, the courier, the photographer, the flight crew, the stylists, it's no longer a single story. It's a chorus, a web, a cover-up, and it all leads to one question. If Meghan wasn't pregnant, who was? Because in Chapter 6, we uncover the missing ultrasound, the appointment that never happened, the OB/GYN who refused to comment, and the hospital record that doesn't exist. Because maybe, just maybe, there was no bump, no baby, no birth, at least not from her. What happens when the world's most photographed pregnancy has no ultrasound, no image, no report, no attending physician? Nothing. That's not just suspicious. That's unprecedented. Because in a royal family built on protocol, tradition, and tightly documented legacies, pregnancy is never a mystery. From Princess Diana's press-documented visits to the hospital to Kate Middleton's well-publicized scans at St. Mary's, every royal mother has gone through a clearly defined process. The public doesn't need every detail, but there's a pattern, a structure, a chain of evidence. Except Meghan. And when Candace Owens began digging, she found nothing. No published ultrasound photo, no confirmed OB/GYN, no hospital records, no official statement confirming which clinic oversaw the prenatal care. Not in the UK, not in Canada, not in the US. Just a blur of press releases, carefully managed photos, and silence. Silence so loud it echoes. Let's be clear. Sharing ultrasound photos is optional. It's a personal choice. But in the world of royalty, where everything is archived, recorded, and preserved for historical record, no documentation becomes suspicious. Let's start with precedent. Princess Diana. Ultrasound reports were archived at St. Mary's. Confirmed physicians. Known timelines. Public visibility. Kate Middleton. Images weren't released to the public, but her hospital visits were confirmed by Kensington Palace. The names of her medical team were known. She was seen entering and leaving private clinics multiple times. Now Meghan? Nothing. Not one sighting at a known clinic. Not one doctor ever quoted. Not one piece of confirmation from the NHS or any affiliated private facility. Candace Owens claims she sent official requests for confirmation to the Portland Hospital in London, the Lindo Wing at St. Mary's, Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, and UCSF Medical Center in San Francisco. All 4 returned the same answer. We have no comment on patients who are not confirmed to be under our care. Some went further. No record located under that name within the time frame requested. Is that concrete proof? No. But in a case like this, absence is evidence. Especially when it's strategic. Let's go deeper. Owens managed to speak to a private sonographer based in Surrey, who worked briefly with the royal household in 2016 and was later approached, indirectly, about a consultation for a high-profile expectant mother in late 2018. She declined, but what caught her attention was the phrasing in the request. This will not require an actual scan, just a photo and discretion. Read that again. No scan, just a photo. She refused, and shortly after, was contacted by a crisis PR team who insisted she sign an NDA. She didn't. Now, years later, she believes the request was tied to Meghan. Owens reviewed the original communication. The contact name was erased, but the document's metadata showed an Archwell-linked IP address. Still think this is coincidence? Then let's talk about the bump file. That's what Owens is calling it. A collection of legal documents, redacted emails, and third-party invoices obtained through whistleblowers, detailing the procurement of a fake ultrasound image. Yes, an actual mock ultrasound, created by a private imaging lab in Burbank, California. Allegedly ordered by a stylist affiliated with Meghan's team. The file includes a line item labeled 3D sonographic render, female fetus approximate, 20 weeks, anonymous client. Total cost, $1,800. Delivery method, digital plus print. Owens' team traced the payment to a Delaware shell company linked to one of Harry and Meghan's known business managers. The timing? 2 weeks before Meghan's bump suddenly grew during the Australia tour. Let that timeline sink in. First the fake ultrasound. Then the theatrical belly debut. Then the questions. But here's where it gets even darker. During an unrelated documentary shoot in 2020, Meghan was asked about her prenatal experience. She offered vague answers. Spoke about connecting spiritually with her baby. Talked about visualizing growth. But never, not once, mentioned a scan. No doctor's name. No due date timeline. No clinic. And when pressed, she pivoted to talking about how some things are too sacred to share, which is fair. Until you realize she sold nearly every other detail to Netflix. Privacy? Or deflection? Candace Owens argues it's the latter. Because in late 2024, a Palace-connected archivist leaked a disturbing revelation to Owens' team. A record, never released publicly, was allegedly requested by Meghan to be sealed indefinitely. Its contents? Medical history, potential hospital visit, and the results of a routine ultrasound that didn't exist. How can a scan produce no results? Unless it wasn't conducted. Or worse, unless the person being scanned wasn't actually pregnant. The archivist, speaking anonymously, said, "The moment I saw the file, I knew something was off. There was a placeholder. No actual scan attached. No notes. Just a file to say the scan had been completed. But no data. That's not how records are kept. That fake record was allegedly stored for 1 week, then deleted. Replaced with a note. Record not retained per privacy directive from legal counsel." Again, let's pause. If everything was above board, why the secrecy? Why delete medical documentation? Why redact information that, for every other royal mother, was preserved? There's one more twist. Owens' team reviewed footage from a maternity awareness charity event in March 2019. During a panel discussion, Meghan was asked, on stage, about the first time she heard the baby's heartbeat. It was a softball question, a feel-good moment, and Meghan froze, just for a second. Then she smiled and said, "It was magical, just magical. I don't think anything prepares you for that sound. Sweet, but generic, too generic. No mention of where it happened, when, what she felt, not even how far along she was." Compare that to Kate Middleton, who in interviews recounted specific moments. "At 13 weeks, we heard it for the first time. William squeezed my hand." Diana spoke openly about her pregnancy fears, cravings, physical symptoms, OBGYN names, and scan details. But Meghan? Only poetry, vagueness, evasion. Because when there is no baby inside you, what can you actually say? So here we are. A pregnancy with no documented scans, no confirmed physician, no hospital visits, no ultrasounds, just press photos, silhouettes, tightly managed optics. And now, a mounting pile of contradictory evidence. Candace Owens says this is just the start. She claims to have obtained communications between 2 California-based OBGYNs. One who was approached, and one who allegedly refused. Both demanded legal protection before speaking publicly. One line, however, leaked. From an email dated January 2019. "I don't feel comfortable attaching my name to this. It feels like a PR stunt, not a medical matter. Not a medical matter." That's chilling. Because if the bump wasn't growing from within her, it was being grown on her. Worn, removed, reattached. And if there was no real pregnancy, there was no real birth. Which brings us to the next bombshell. Because in Chapter 7, we finally get our hands on a redacted report. A document buried deep inside a private Beverly Hills clinic. A report that was meant to be sealed forever. But now, it's out. And it contains only 2 things. A name blacked out, and a field labeled gestational confirmation. Left blank. Have you ever brushed your fingers across something and instantly felt wrong? That gut-deep jolt of unease when you know what you're touching shouldn't be there. When your instincts scream louder than logic. That's the exact moment a seamstress, known only as Marlene in court-protected documents, realized she was involved in something far beyond couture. And it all started with a hemline. Before the world questioned the size of Meghan Markle's baby bump. Before footage went viral and Candace Owens dropped bombshell after bombshell. Marlene was just a mid-tier staffer in the royal wardrobe division. Not a designer. Not a stylist. Not a headline. Just a woman with decades of fabric in her fingers and secrets stitched into silence. But the day she ran her hand across Meghan's dress, feeling not flesh, not cloth, but something molded, squishy, unnatural, she knew something wasn't right. She wasn't supposed to speak. But now she has. And what she told Candace Owens might just turn everything upside down. Let's rewind. It was December 2018, a little more than halfway through Meghan's supposed pregnancy. The Duchess had requested a custom-fitted evening gown for a diplomatic reception. Meghan, ever the fashion-forward royal, had rejected the palace's formal wardrobe department and instead insisted on using outside stylists, Hollywood contacts, Los Angeles designers flown in for fittings. But due to last-minute changes, a royal seamstress had to be called in. Someone discreet, trusted, experienced. Enter Marlene. According to Owens, Marlene had served under both Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth. She wasn't a name the public knew, but within palace walls, she was respected, revered. She had never broken protocol, never spoken to the press, never overstepped. Until Meghan. In Candace's Tell-All podcast interview, Marlene described her first encounter with Meghan as guarded. Not cold exactly, but distant, and strangely rehearsed. She wouldn't make full eye contact, Marlene says. She'd smile, but only when someone was watching. And she kept adjusting her coat, constantly. Then came the dress. A sleek, silk-based number with a high empire waist. Flattering. Designed to drape smoothly over Meghan's growing bump. But it didn't. It clung. It bunched. It draped wrong. Marlene, trained to spot imperfections in a blink, noticed immediately that something wasn't moving naturally beneath the fabric. The bump didn't shift with Meghan's posture. It didn't flatten or sway like it would on a real body. It sat there, static, artificial, almost too perfect. So she reached out. Just a simple professional touch. A seam adjuster's instinct. She flattened the dress along Meghan's stomach with her palm. And froze. It gave, she told Owens. Like rubber. Like memory foam. Not muscle. Not skin. Not bone. I felt edges. Edges. Think about that. Not a curve. Not a belly button. Edges. As if she'd just laid her hand on a prosthetic. In that instant, Meghan flinched. Pulled away. Please don't adjust there, she said. It's sensitive. Sensitive? To a seamstress adjusting fabric?